We're now going to head to Erbil, Iraq, where ABC's James Longman has an insane story about an American father whose young children, at that time, they were 7 and 3 years old, were kidnapped from his Florida home by their mother and taken to Syria. James, good to be with you.
Hi, Lana. Yeah, this really is an insane story, as you say. We've just spoken to Basharul Shikder, the father, who is here in Erbil and wanting to find out what has happened to his children. We've got to rewind a bit to 2015. He comes home to his family home in Orlando to find that his wife is no longer there. She has taken their newborn daughter, Zahra, and their 4-year-old son, Yusuf, and has gone to live in the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State in Syria. What follows is 4 years of anguish. Basharul on the phone, trying desperately to get in touch with his wife. He actually doesn't hear from her for a full month. He finds out from her family that it's probably Syria that she's gone to, but he's kind of putting 2 and 2 together because she had intimated interest in the Islamic State before going, but he had put that out of his mind. He couldn't think for a minute that she was actually going to go. And then he informs the FBI immediately when he discovers that she's gone, and is without news for a full month until finally another person calls. He told me he was driving down the highway in Florida when he gets this phone call from a man with a British accent, an English sounding voice, who says to him, "Are you Abu Yusuf, father of Yusuf?" He calls him, and he says yes. And he goes, "Well, your wife and children are here. They are safer here than they were with you, and we want you to come. We want you to join and come to live in the Islamic State." And for 4 years, what Basharul thinks he has to do is try to convince the ISIS operatives, who he knows are watching the messages that he's sending to his wife, that he is going to come. He's only doing that in order that they allow him to continue his contact with his wife and children. And for 4 years, she's sending him photographs, pictures, they're messaging each other. She's trying to convince him to come, but slowly and surely, ISIS realizes that he has no intention of joining. He's passing all these messages, by the way, to the FBI, cooperating them with them fully in the hope that somehow they'll be able to be extracted. In the end, she divorces him. ISIS forces her to divorce him. We have seen the contract that ISIS draws up in an ISIS court to force her to divorce him. She remarries, and then the trail goes cold for months and months, until just a month ago, where he gets a message from her sister, who she had traveled to ISIS territory with, saying that she has been killed in the latest fighting. The wife now, we know, a month ago was killed somewhere near Baghouz, which is that epicenter of the last stand of ISIS, which we've been reporting about for the last 2 weeks. And the children, he understands, have been injured, badly injured to their faces. And so he is desperate. He comes over here to Erbil and he wants to get into Syria. We had this message and we want to find these kids. So we have been spending the last few days going from place to place, going from official to official, finding out any information we can about whether these children are among the thousands who have been evacuated from ISIS's last stand. We were basically just a few days ago shaking the gates of the main camp where 40,000 refugees are, thinking perhaps those kids could be inside. We had a source that suggested they may be there. I was on the phone at one stage to the US consul's office in Iraq to try to get permission to get inside this camp. It has been quite a story, and still Basharul does not know if his children are alive or dead, but he's hoping against hope that they are, and he wants to come into Syria to get them.
Oh my goodness.
Quite a story, Lana.
Wow, James, we have covered some insane stories in the past, but this ranks right up there with some of the craziest that I've ever heard. A father's love that just will not be abated until he gets his children back. What are the logistics that would go into trying to retrieve them?
I mean, he obviously wants to get inside Syria, but we were trying to say to him, look, Basharul, it's a war zone. You could be killed going inside. And look, if you do find your kids, if your kids are alive, then what are they going to do with you dead? So he has been placated now. I don't think he's going to make those efforts. All Americans, by the way, are told very forcefully by the US State Department to under no circumstances make their journey inside Syria. At the moment, he's in the process of talking to lawyers to try to coordinate with the US military. There have been instances of Americans found inside Syria who have then been airlifted out, and that is a possibility if the children are identified. But you can imagine he is just a desperate, desperate man. Every time you mention these two children, Yusuf and Zahra, his face lights up and then he crumples, because the anguish that this man is going through one of his children, Zahra, she has been brought up in Arabic. Her English isn't even that good anymore. Yusuf, thankfully, he's been speaking to him. When he was speaking to him, he found out that his English was okay. But, the journey that this man has been on is just unthinkable. And I think for any parent watching, the idea that your children are now alone, orphaned somewhere in Syria is just incredible. So everyone is hoping that the children are in there, but there is no real way of knowing just yet. Just remember, like I said, 40,000 refugees, and probably amongst them, 20,000 of them are children. We've been in these refugee camps. It's basically kids everywhere. So aid agencies are now having to go from child to child to work out where these children are. And the last we heard, there was a possibility that they may have been being looked after by a group of British ISIS wives. Well, are they going to give up these children? Or do they think that they don't want to give them over to the great infidel and they want to keep the kids? I mean, the whole thing is massively complicated, but he has a lot of people on his side. He's praying every day. The man is a very observant Muslim. His message to her repeatedly throughout this whole ordeal was, this is not the right way. You need to come out of ISIS territory. I said, are you praying for her now that you know that she's died? He said, I pray for ISIS because I want ISIS to understand that this is not true Islam. He's a wonderful, very sweet man, and everyone's hearts go out to him. We're really hoping that this story, which has been epic, comes to a good ending.
An epic story indeed. Thank you, James. Really, in war, there are always stories of heartbreak, but this one takes it to another level.